In this khutbah, we wanted to continue the reflection on the life of Ibrahim, given this unique moment that we are in. It doesn't always happen to be the case that Eid and Jum'ah coincide, but today they coincide, and so we wanted to keep consistency in our dhikr, our reflection, our remembrance of Allah wa ta'ala, and especially of the Prophet Ibraheem alayhi salatu wasalam, because of the reality of Hajj. We want to carry over 2 points that we mentioned in the Eid khutbah with regard to the life of Ibrahim. And we want to add a third point. The first is that one of the qualities that we see in Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam is the quality of shukr. And we mentioned that. And in the Quran, shukr at times is equivalent to iman. So the opposite of shukr is kufr. And shukr, in this highest implementation, if we really are thankful to Allah wa ta'ala, and I speak to myself first, then we live a life that is aiming to please Allah. That's a different type of life than what is being promoted in the dunya today. A life that is pleasing to Allah wa ta'ala. And the way that we get to understand what the pleasure of Allah is through Islam, implementing the deen. That's not a individual interpretation point where everyone comes up with their own ideas to how do we please Allah wa ta'ala. The manasik, or the rules of Hajj, we didn't make them up, we inherited them. Ibadah in Islam is what we call tawqifi. It's not tawfiqi. And tawqifi is a concept which it means that it is taught to us by revelation, by al-wahi. Tawfiqi means that we can use our intellect, we can research, we can kind of figure it out on our own. But our intellect is there to help us to reflect. And we mentioned this before, that the universe is there open. The whole of the universe, the human being, is open for our reflection. But not just for our reflection, but to understand our role and our purpose, people. Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam, one of the things that we are made clear of is that he was a destroyer of superstition and falsehood. And if we're ever to move or to progress in this ummah, we have to come back to that reality of destroying superstition. You know, we have an over-exaggeration with the impact of the jinn and magic in the eye. All of those things have their place in the deen. But sometimes we give those things more power in our lives than we give to Allah wa ta'ala. We feel that those things are more powerful to have an impact on us than Allah wa ta'ala. And that's a mistake. We're not going to bash the Muslims and say, well, this, you're not really a Muslim. So people have to grow into the Islam. We have to grow. And it's important because when we begin to grow in this reality, we're going to be a different ummah. Because in today's time, although it's supposed to be a scientific age, And we contribute to the culture because you have Muslims in the universities, you have Muslims in the corporations, you have Muslims in the research hospitals. You have Muslims in R&D in the corporations, contributing to the growth of knowledge. But it's just as superstitious to believe that there's some creature somewhere that Allah created that's controlling things for the negative against us. And we're supposed to believe that Allah Ta'ala has full power. If I tell you that this idol is controlling things in the world and we have to sacrifice to it, you'd be like, but brother, that goes against Tawheed. That's just as superstitious to believe that the world just popped up by itself. See what I'm saying? That Allah doesn't exist. And that's the ideas that are put forward to our children in this time period. They just popped up on the earth. Life is meaningless. The rules of science don't have any real value. For Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam, the movement of the sun, the moon, the stars, Allah tabaraka wa ta'ala controlled those things. And because he understood that, he understood the place of each of those things. Can you imagine? In a world without pollution, where everything is extremely beautiful, it would be easy to believe that the moon and the sun and the forces of nature control things, independent of Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala. But Ibrahim challenged that. And because he challenged that type of reality, and he challenged bad religion, he challenged the leadership of religious organizations that promoted this type of concept to the people. He wanted the minds of the people to be free so that they understand that it's Allah alone, who's not a human being, who has all of the perfect qualities. It's Allah alone that is after the interests of the human being, meaning Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala wants good for you. It's Allah that controls the world. It's Allah that gives life and gives death. It's Allah that taught the human being by the pen. It's Allah that gave the human being eyes to see, ears to hear, and an intellect to reflect, to discover the secrets of life. It's Allah that taught us that behind sickness, there's a germ. And if we control these germs and these bacteria and so on and so forth, we can control health. But what's missing behind the advancements in technology and medicine and so on and so forth is shukr to Allah Ta'ala Ta'ala. Human being thinks that all of this is just, we're the ones that are behind it. For every advancement in technology as Muslims, we have to have behind the iman, or else it goes crazy, and we see it. For all of the advancements that are in technology, we have to think, how can it be used to better life on earth? How can it be used for good? And then we have to be the ones that give shukr to Allah. Or else we're moving in a world where technology is advancing, and we're moving with that world which denies Allah, which gives no shukr to Allah for these things, for the facilitation of life. If you reflect on just the power of the phone by itself, where it has reached in today's time, you have the ability to move millions of dollars from one place to another place just at a button. Where AI is going, there was times when to find an answer to something may take you years. You could pull up research at your fingertips. That demands shukr, people. There was a time period where we were on horses and mules. And now we're in fine cars. There was a time period in which we were not able to control the temperature in buildings. Now we can. These things demand from us, we reflect upon them. And then we turn around and we're thankful to Allah tabaraka wa ta'ala. And the more that we're thankful to Allah, Allah will increase us, because we will understand the ni'mah. We will understand the goodness. We will understand the blessings that have been poured upon us on a daily basis. Things that we don't reflect upon, such as the ability to go to the bathroom just for 1 or 2 days. Imagine what it's like not to be able to go to the bathroom. Imagine what it's like to have to carry a bag around so that you go to the bathroom just to urinate. But for us, most of us that don't have kidney problems and so on and so forth, it's easy. But we don't think that that's a ni'mah from Allah tabaraka wa ta'ala. Or lose our eyesight. Imagine a world where we can't see. Or imagine a world where we lose our ability to be mobile. We can't move. We have to come in on a wheelchair. After years of living independently, I move this way, I move this way, I pick this up, I do what I want, and then you're left as a cripple. Imagine that reality. Imagine a reality in which you can't hear. You can no longer hear the sweetness of the voice of your wife or your husband or your children or your mother or your father or anyone that's beloved to you. Or you can't hear, you can't see the beauty of the world, the beautiful flower, the singing of the birds, the beautiful rays of sunshine, the beauty of water you can't feel even. This is why we have to recollect ourselves, people. There's more to life than just possessing. Ibrahim showed us that it's important for us to know where to put the dunya. That we're supposed to be on top of the dunya, not the dunya on top of us. That human beings are supposed to be in control of the dunya, not the dunya in control of our hearts, in control of our senses, in control of our desires. That's how we're enslaved. We're meant to be free. We're meant to be free and only be enslaved to Allah, not to our desires, not to economy, not to people, not to superstition. Islam wants us to have hope, not to be people of fear. We're always worrying what's about to happen, what's about to happen. And we see in our mother Hajj the example of dependency on Allah, trust in Allah, not knowing what's going to happen, but heart at ease, because having confidence that Allah tabaraka wa ta'ala will care for her. And that's embedded in Hajj, is embedded in the cornerstone of the deen that we call Hajj, the pillar that we call Hajj, the rukn that we call Hajj, which is impossible to be a Muslim without believing in Hajj. And between Safa and Marwa, we relive that experience of what it means to go into the dunya and you don't know where your provision is going to come from. And you have to tend for your children, but you trust that Allah will come through. And Allah does come through. وَالْأَسْبَابْ غَيْرُ وَاضِحَةٍ. The causes or the way or how it is that Allah is going to come through is not clear. We're not asking for the Muslims to believe, not to believe in cause and effect. We're not saying that the Muslims shouldn't work hard. No. But at the end of the day, that trust is extremely important. And we learned that in Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam. And Ibrahim, the model was there that when he looks at the world, he increases in certainty and yaqeen. يزداد يقينا بعد النظر في المخلوقات. After he looks at the creation, he only increases in certainty in Allah tabaraka wa ta'ala. Even with the secret of life and death, death is a difficult thing to reflect on. Difficult. When you think about death and it stops and everything stops, then you ask, what comes after? That's where you're faced to reflect about what you believe in, what you truly believe in, what you hope in, what you depend on. We could go through the motions. We could go through the motions. But when it comes to something like death, difficult. When it comes to something like life, when a child comes, we celebrate. You say, mashallah, another one is born. It's easier to accept. But death is like a zilzala. It's like an earthquake when it comes. And Ibrahim asked to understand these things, the secret of life and death. And he asked not because he had doubt in Allah, like the people of this age. The people of this age, we are among the people on the earth that doubts Allah after all of the ayat that are manifested, that are shown, that are given, all of the gifts that are given. They doubt in the existence of Allah even. Ibrahim didn't doubt like that. Ibrahim just asked for clarification. And his looking at the world, his looking at, for instance, birds living and dying, it only increased them. The same thing, science should be that for us. Biology should be that for us. Anatomy should be that for us. Studying history should be that for us with the rise and fall of civilizations. When we look at the way that the sperm impregnates, when we look at that whole process and how amazing it is, it should only increase us in certainty. When we look at how the body repairs itself when it goes into sickness, it should only increase us in certainty, Allah Ta'ala. When you're in your struggles and you don't know what the solution is going to be, and you look back and you remember, wow, just 2 months ago, I didn't know how I was going to be in this place. And your situation, your circumstances transformed and changed. That demands shukr. It demands shukr. Lastly, I wanted to focus on this point, a third point, which is one of the things, and I mention it quite often when I come here, but it's the point of working together, generation and generation, working together and generational continuity. Where we're failing is our ability to communicate with our youth and our youth with us. Let me put it to you this way. Where we're failing and we're struggling is our ability to communicate with our own children and grandchildren and nieces and nephews. We're failing in that regard. And we have to realize sometimes it's not that we're failing because of something that we're doing. Sometimes it is. Sometimes we have to change. We have to modify. But one of the things that we need to be clear on is that we live in a society which divides and conquers. It takes the youth and it builds their own culture. So you don't even know what their language is. They speak a language that we don't even understand. And then the older people, they're like expired. They no longer have intelligence. They no longer have value. Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam in the ayah of the Quran with يَرْفَعُ إِبْرَاهِيمُ الْقَوَاعِدَ مِنَ الْبَيْتِ وَإِسْمَعِيلُ رَبَّنَا تَقَبَّلْ مِنَّا إِنَّكَ أَنْتَ السَّمِيعُ الْعَلِيمُ. In this ayah, in which Ibrahim is pointed to after he and Ismail, after they established the Kaaba, the cornerstones, the foundations of the Kaaba. It doesn't just say that they established the Kaaba. The Quran is focusing on Qawaid al-Bayt, means that which is stable, right? It's not going to change one generation to the next. It will remain, is the foundation. Just like a tornado can come and take away all of these walls, but the floor, the foundation will remain. Generations came and fell into shirk, but the foundation of the Kaaba remained until the appearance of Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam, Muhammad bin Abdullah, who we call the Prophet Muhammad, who was from the generations, the children, the grandchildren of Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam. And he came back and he set Qawaid al-Bayt on his foundations after the children of Ibrahim fell into shirk. The Quran is showing us how was that Ibrahim, he crossed the generation gap. He and Ismail, his own son, the younger generation and the older generation, they operated together. And they both were on the same methodology with the same clarity that what it is that they give to Allah as a sacrifice from their efforts, right? It has to be accepted from Allah. It has to be accepted from Allah. Rabbana taqabbal minna. Right? That's important, people. I want to leave us with that. Are supplying our families with what they need. Right? We can say, yes, I'm doing my job, but it's not something that we hold up our families' necks to control them. Are given to the masjid. It's not something that we give to the community to control it. Our building of the masjid, our giving of sadaqah, whatever it is that we do. There's another factor before it has benefit for us. We can give it. We can announce it. Sometimes it's good to announce. We can be consistent with it. We can even give a lot. But it won't mean anything unless it has acceptance from Allah. Al-Qabul. But the amazing thing here, people, is that Ismail understood that. It wasn't just the old people that they know that they're going to the end of life, you know what I'm saying? They realize now life is coming to close. I lived my life, I made a lot of mistakes, now I have to correct my relationship with Allah. No. You know what they say, majority of the Muslim world, they always people want to criticize, but this is not totally accurate. But it's something we need to pay attention to. They say, oh, the masajid are full of old people only. The masajid, the youth abandoned them. This is not the reality here in this example. In this example, the youth understand exactly who they are before Allah wa ta'ala. And they understand the secrets of Iman. And exactly what it means to please Allah wa ta'ala. Ismail models that. That's where we have to work. On the side of gaining acceptance from Allah wa ta'ala, which, look, the ayah of the Quran, as much as I reflect upon this ayah, it's amazing. Because in this context of reestablishing the Kaaba, being successful with being able to have your children with you in the process of doing good, the ayah of the Quran, it has Ibrahim saying, Innaka anta as-sami'ul alim. The true choice of words that Allah wa ta'ala set out here. Innaka is easy to just say anta, that you are the one who hears and sees all things. It's easy to say that. But that's not the choice of the wording. Innaka is saying with certainty, you, making Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala very close and making it very clear that there's no doubt in this, that Allah is the one, right? Allah is the one that hears and has knowledge over all things. If we think about those sifat, those qualities of Allah, it's Sami'ul Alim. This should bring us to the station or the maqam of ihsan, knowing that Allah hears everything from the inner workings of our hearts and knows everything, our intention, how it changes, what we do in secrecy. Allah wa ta'ala knows when we do good things and it doesn't turn out right. Allah knows without limitation. That means the person that's corrupt in the dunya, Allah knows with perfect knowledge. The person that's righteous in the dunya, Allah knows. There's no hiding from Allah Ta'ala in that regard. So Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam, this example is given of how Ibrahim was successful in being able to bring the new generation in and have them under Iman and worship Allah Ta'ala. And at the same time, everything that they did, the Quran is emphasizing, Allah is well aware. It's not just doing for show, but Allah, He is clarifying the importance of ikhlas, or sincerity or purity of intention. That's the most difficult part, believers. Ya ayyuhan nas, as'ab shay tahakkum ala niyyah. One of the most difficult things is to control our intention. That's the heart of Tawheed. On the inner level, fil batin. That's the heart of Tawheed. Controlling what it is that the intention is about. Is the intention for Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala or not for Allah? And that's the most easiest way to practice, to perfect our Tawheed, but it's hard. It's easy from the sense, I'm going to focus on this one thing, intention. The difficult thing after that is, how can I keep control over my intention so that my intention from my rising to my going to sleep is for Allah, so that my living and my dying is for Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala, right? And what we see in the example of Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam is a big message to us today, especially to those that are lahajiin or refugees or immigrants. For Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam was one of the biggest models for refugees and immigrants, because he was both a refugee and an immigrant. He had to flee his land. He had to flee his family. And when you're lost and you don't, what direction do I go in? How do I navigate with all of the changes in the dunya? Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam shows us to stay firm with Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala. Don't let the dunya put fear into your hearts where you can't navigate. One political leader and one administration will last this amount of time, where Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala has no limits. Don't fear. Don't lose a sense of orientation. Realize what's important. Even in the race for pursuing rizq, it's important is making sure that you preserve your families as well and your children. But not just preserving them to making sure that they have, but making sure that they're good with Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala. You can't control that 100%, because when we look at the children of Nuh alayhi salatu wasalam and the children of Yaqub alayhi salatu wasalam, they were children, some of them that were rebellious. And no matter what was done in the house of Nubuwwah, in a house, a Muslim house that was righteous, you have some children that will go astray by themselves. But still is our responsibility to make sure that we model as much as we can. So with this, we bring this khutbah to a close, but we want to reflect on those things. The reality of intention, the reality of our success is continuity, meaning making sure that we have that bond with our children. The relationship between the father and his children is unique and is something that's being destroyed. The relationship between the mother and the child is something that's natural, because the child comes from the biology, the mother gives birth. So there's that connection to the point where when that child is born, we have to cut that tie between the child and the mother. But the relationship between the father and his children has to be developed. And society can turn it around, and society can destroy it. So fathers have to be attentive to that. And Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam is that model in that regard. أقول قولي هذا واستغفر لي ولكم والحمد لله رب العالمين. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما صليت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم وبارك على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما باركت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم في العالمين إنك حميد مجيد. We ask you, Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala, to accept from us, and we ask you to forgive us and to aid us, especially in those times where our desire may overpower us or may doubt may cloud our thinking and our iman. Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala, we depend upon you. Allah, we ask you to aid us and to open the gates of iman for us and rizq. We ask you to facilitate for our families, Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala, and for those that are weak on the earth. And we ask you, Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala, for your protection. And we ask you, Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala, for a sense of stability. And we ask you, Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala, to facilitate things that are good for us in this dunya. And Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala, we ask you for our children and those that come after them to the day of Yawm al-Qiyamah, that you protect them, that you instill in their hearts iman, Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala. And we ask that you raise from among them people that will pray for us, Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala. People that will pray for us when we're gone, Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala. And we ask you, Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala, that we die in a state of Islam. We ask you for those that have died, Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala, that you take their sins and you release them from them, and you turn their sins into good deeds, and you make their scales heavy, Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala. We ask you, Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala, for any good that they did, that it be accepted and then be multiplied for them. And we ask you, Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala, to count them from those that have good ranking in Jannah, Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala. We ask you for those that are sick, that their sickness not overcome them and overwhelm them and cause it to be a means of doubting in you, but that their sickness be a means to increasing their iman. And we ask for those that are struggling in their businesses and those that are struggling with poverty, Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala, that these things not shake their iman, but these things increase them in iman. Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala, we ask you that we be people of shukr, Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala. And we ask you, Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala, that you accept the hajj of those that have gone to make their hajj. And we ask for those that are waiting, Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala, that you facilitate a way for them. And that this hajj that we make, Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala, be rewarded with Jannah. أقول قولي هذا واستغفر لي ولكم والحمد لله رب العالمين. أقيموا الصلاة.